This is Your Other Brothers Podcast.
Fear, you're not my lover, you're not my friend, you're not my brother. Oh, and no, there's no room here. There's a vacancy in my heart, but it ain't for fear.
Welcome, friends, to Your Other Brothers Podcast, navigating faith, homosexuality, and masculinity together. I'm your host, Tom, and I have missed saying those words so much. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining. This is Your Other Brothers Podcast, and we're back after a months-long hiatus, much longer than I anticipated. We're going to get to all the reasons why in a second. Right off the bat, this is sounds pretty new, doesn't it? Brand new show, brand new theme. There's a whole lot of new things coming, a lot of old things coming too. Speaking of some old things, from the city of Oaks, it's our other brother, Ryan. What's up, Ryan?
Hey, everyone.
And also speaking of old things, from the city of Forts, it's our other brother, Jacob. What's up, Jacob?
Hey, guys.
Jacob and Ryan, it's good to see you guys again. I've missed you guys.
You too, Tom.
It feels like it has been months upon months, even though it has only been a month, but it is really good to see each of your beautiful faces and hear your voices.
Yeah, Jacob, I saw pictures of your bald cut, but I gotta say,
Yes.
in moving real video, it's a sharp look. You got it going on.
It's very
Thank you. I was a bit concerned about where you were heading there. Like, yeah, I saw pictures, but now that I've seen it in real life, I'm not sure.
Well, I
I'm
haven't
not
seen
sure
it in
about
real
that.
life yet, so
That's true.
We'll
You're right.
reserve that
This is
judgment.
just baby steps.
Well,
to real
y'all,
life.
this is real life now. We only exist digitally. That's the only way we can exist in this culture and in this world now, because that is just the way things are in this era of coronavirus. Spoiler alert for everyone listening to this in
True
the
facts.
future. We're still there. You would think a months-long hiatus would have gotten us out of it, but nope. Here we are. Yeah, right off the bat, so it's been a few months since we recorded our last episode. We sound new, we sound fresh. Big, huge shout out to one of our supporters for composing this new music for us. It's one of the many things that are just new and different as we enter in this new season of the show, and even Your Other Brothers at large, our community. And like I said, we're going to talk more about that as this show progresses. We're talking about gratitude today. And the reason we're talking about gratitude is because our last episode, which, okay, I need to get a little, I think I've ranted about this in the past. I have this rant against podcasts that call their episode or put their episodes into so-called seasons, even though there's no difference between season 2, episode 7 and season 3, episode 4. It's just, they're still doing the same thing. They just took a break. That's all. It's not like a serialized, series of episodes that tells a story and then you take a break and then you start another story and then tell that, whatever. But I guess with what I'm trying to say is this was our second break. We did this with Your Other Brothers Podcast. We did a string of episodes, took a nice break, then did another long string of episodes, and just now took a break. So technically this could be considered our season 3 premiere if you're just judging on dates. But anyway, if you're going to look at our season 2 finale, we talked about the coronavirus here in America was just starting. And Jacob, I've told you this one-on-one, but you said something in that episode to the effect of yeah, I don't know, in the future, people could listen to our episode from March 2020 and be like, oh man, they had no idea what was coming, the things that were to come. And at the time, I kind of did laugh it off and was like, yeah, that's funny, but it's we'll get it under control in 3 or 4 weeks tops. And now here we are recording in July of 2020, and dare I say, things are worse. So thanks for that foreboding premonition,
Yeah,
Mr. Baranowski. Here we are now in the future.
Well, I don't want to be the one who's always bringing up, bad omens, but this, I hate to say it again, but this could also be the same kind of thing that we are here in
No, stop.
July.
Stop it. No.
What?
Because then like people will
'Cause it
listen.
might- yeah,
and they'll be
exactly.
Like, oh
Like,
man, July.
come,
They
like-
had no idea what was coming. Come
Exactly.
December.
Exactly. Come.
Oh gosh. But anyway, what
This
I wanted
is
to
the
get
year.
at.
This is the year we finally learned to stop saying it couldn't get worse.
It could always get worse, folks. Yeah, what I wanted to say was we talked about we did focus on fear. That was our last episode. As we talked about fear as coronavirus was starting to spread, and just like talking about our lives as well, fear in our lives beyond the virus. But we wanted to like start off this new season or this new kickstart of episodes. I guess thinking a little more optimistically, despite all of the doom and gloom that seems to be pervading the atmosphere right now. So we're going to talk about gratitude, and we're going to talk about, I mean, it's been a few months. This will be an awesome time to catch up with each other and also catch up our listening audience on how the last few months have been, because it's been hard on all of us. Like we could certainly, I don't think we'd have any problem talking for an hour and a half about what's been hard again for the last few months. But I think this is an awesome opportunity to look at the brighter side, not in a sugar-coated way, because we certainly do not sugarcoat here at Your Other Brothers. But it is important to, gratitude for me personally has been such a keyword and theme of the last few months, especially as I get to share a bit of my experience from the last couple of months personally beyond coronavirus. Like gratitude has been such an important element of my existence. And so I'm excited to, talk about those stories today in this episode.
So, Tom, speaking of realizing that it could always get worse, how have your past few months been?
Funny that you ask, because, dear listeners, they have gotten worse. And, I've told this story so many times now in so many different contexts from, I have a personal blog, I have a personal newsletter, Beyond Yob, and then obviously all the just social media, digital connections that I have, that I've been sharing my story the last couple of months. But I recognize there are absolutely people listening who have no idea, who have never heard anything, or maybe they've heard bits and pieces and haven't put it all together. So I figured this would be obviously the right time to share what I've been experiencing the last couple of months, because it has been a whirlwind, definitely the most physically tumultuous time of my life. And I even mentioned on a couple, there might have been, I forget, but there might have been a couple, I did all these short form podcasts after our last YOBcast, and I'll talk about that in the announcements later in this episode. But this ConvoCast, there were a few episodes, if not the bulk of them, where I was experiencing allergy symptoms, and I either mentioned it on the show or with the person I was talking to one-on-one before the recording, just to mention like, hey, I'm kind of experiencing these allergy symptoms, so I'm drinking lots of water, and sometimes my voice gives out because my throat's kind of scratchy, and so that was happening during that whole stretch, post that Fear YOBcast episode. And I get spring allergies fairly commonly every year. We have lots of beautiful trees and flowers here in the southeastern United States, and pollen just gets everywhere. All the cars turn yellow for like a few weeks because there's just pollen everywhere. And I've been taking lots of neighborhood walks to keep myself mentally sane during this time of pandemics and shut-ins, and nothing's open and there's nowhere to go. So I would spend hours outside walking around, and for weeks I just kind of chalked up these allergies feeling worse than usual to just all that extra exposure outside. But then, 1 week turns to 2, turns to 3, and all of a sudden I start experiencing joint pain that just starts in my feet, and then all of a sudden just starts rotating all around my body, moves to my knees, moves to my elbows, moves to my hips, wrists and fingers eventually. So that was odd. I was like, what's going on there? I did the last CrossFit workout I ever did. Spoiler alert, we're going to get to that too. The last CrossFit workout I ever did was called Death by Burpee. And so I did these, like, I don't even know, like 100 burpees or something. It was a crazy workout. And I thought for sure that I just overdid it. I tweaked something. What did I do? Stopped working out for a couple weeks, kept my joints kept kind of like getting better, but then getting worse again and moving all over my body. And so it was very strange just trying to figure out what was going on there. And my first significant breaking point was when one night, I think this was about 3.5 weeks into this, my right leg just completely locked into place. My knee swelled. I couldn't move my knee, couldn't turn left or right. Trying to go to bed that night was a chore to say the least, because I couldn't even I just couldn't find any relief. Any position I was in, it just hurt so much. And so, so I went to urgent care, got looked at. All my vitals were great, fine, amazing, so healthy. And I was just recommended to up the dosage on the allergy meds. I was kind of sporadic with it, wasn't really consistent with it. And so, so I had this like whole new regimen that he told me to try out for 2 weeks, and 2 weeks came and went and wasn't feeling any better. The joint pain kind of kept coming and going. My leg would get better, but then a couple weeks later, my opposite leg froze up, and I would have to like, it was so sad because I would like have to stagger to the shower because I would have this like hot water coming down, and that would ease the inflammation. Or I would lay like out on the floor in my living room with a giant bag of Sam's frozen berries and just like put that on my knee because I needed relief in some way. And I was just like really struggling to sleep at night some nights. Eventually reached a point where my parents came and rescued me because they thought, and potentially I thought too, that something in my apartment was affecting me. I had all these, like, I don't know, I was just thinking like maybe there's mold or fungus or something's in the air, something's in the walls or the ceiling that is finally gotten to me after, 7-8 months of living here. But went to my parents' house and actually started getting worse, was not getting better at all. I had congestion this whole time. Suddenly the congestion was turning to sinus pain. It hurt to breathe through my nose. So that's fun. So it's like after a month and a half, this thing, whatever this thing is, has been like creeping into my body. It's been super slow and just like nothing serious, but occasional like red flags with the knee pain or now with the sinus pain. And I don't know, it's just like, at what point do you make the judgment call that this is serious and that you should get it looked at? And so I had some friends recommend that I get some blood work done, that would be more of an indicator versus whatever a doctor could look at externally, that the blood would tell a better story. And so got some blood work done. There was a 3-day delay to get those results back. And those 3 days were some of the longest of my life because I feel like up until that point, if whatever was wrong with me was a slow creeping thing, in those 3 days, it kind of felt like every day was twice as worse as the previous day. And I'm sure a lot of that was just mentally with having to be patient and waiting and trying to, see what the results say. But by the end of that 3rd day, when I finally got the results back, I was like, literally felt like a zombie. Like all I could do, I slept like maybe 1 or 2 hours a night. My skin was turning this like ashy yellow color. So I was just like, I was literally losing the life force from my body. I got my blood results back and just like, there were 5 or 6 categories. I'm not a medical person, so I'm not going to just rattle off random acronyms and letters, but I know my red blood cell count and my hemoglobin levels were severely low, and along with some other things. So yeah, I talked to some medically minded folks in my life, and the consensus was pretty clear that I needed to get to a hospital sooner than later. And which is, again, this is so crazy for me because I've lived up until this point, I'm 33 years old. Like I had never been significantly sick. I was sick once as a kid for like a few days, the flu, I guess it was the flu or whatever. But like normally when I get sick, it's like a quick day, I'm over it, I'm better again. I've never broken a bone, never spent any time in the hospital whatsoever. So all of this just kind of came completely out of nowhere. My body just failing me for some unknown reason. What is going on? And I wound up going to the ER with my, I had this like bum knee at the time, so I could like hardly walk, and my dad would have to help me into the hospital, and they wheeled me into to the emergency room and started hooking wires into my arms. Like, again, things I've never experienced before. I was like hooked to that machine, what you see in all the TV shows and the movies with the little lines and the little numbers. And if I moved around too much, it started beeping because my blood pressure was going too high. So it was just like all new life experience for me, just sitting there in the silence of that emergency room. And I wound up spending a week in that hospital as doctors did tests, drew my blood, sent things in jars to other hospitals farther away to figure out what was wrong with me. And I got a blood transfusion, and I got antibiotics in my system, and was tested for tuberculosis of all the things, because what the doctors found was that I was bleeding out of my lung. I had this cavity in my lung, and that's where I was losing all of this blood. And eventually came back negative for tuberculosis, which meant that the likely diagnosis was that, which a lot of friends had been telling me this for weeks. So I wasn't totally surprised by it, but it meant the likely scenario was that I have an autoimmune disease. That's why it's a common symptom of joint pain, and the sinus infection and everything I was experiencing. It seemed to match up with a lot of just a lot of Googling that I'd done. I try not to get too deep into that WebMD black hole, but it seemed like an autoimmune disease was a likely scenario, and it just mattered. It just the doctors just had to see what was in my blood to determine that. And so when all my thorough blood tests came back, that is exactly what the hospital doctor said. And then since I've come back to Asheville, I've seen several specialists, and everyone who's seen the results has agreed that this is what it is. And so I suffer with something called granulomatosis with polyangiitis, abbreviated GPA. It affects only 3 out of 100,000 people, which, as an Enneagram 4, there is something inside of me, I will be honest, it's like, wow, I'm so special. Only whatever, it's like 0.00003% of humanity deals with this. And so super rare. It's a super rare form of vasculitis, which basically just means my immune system attacks blood vessels, and we have blood vessels all over our body, basically. And so it can attack anywhere it wants to, but for whatever reason, GPA likes to attack the sinuses, it likes to attack the lungs, it likes to attack joints, and it likes to attack the kidneys. And a fun story, guys, I've already told you, but to our fun listening audience. So having spent 33 years never going to a hospital, I found out while in the hospital, after they did a CAT scan of my midsection, that I was born with only one kidney. And I had no idea. My parents had no idea. My mom, I think, still refuses to believe it. But that was a fun / haunting story, because if I have a disease that attacks the kidneys and I only have one, then that's a little scary, because now I need to be extremely dutiful and watchful, and maybe have a little more care for kidney health than the average person. So that's just another fun comedic part of the story, as if getting an autoimmune disease during the worst pandemic of our lifetimes wasn't comedic enough. It kind of just goes par for the course, basically.
One tiny question to interject. How does one take special care of their own kidney that they possess? Are there actually things that you can change in your lifestyle to take great care of your one and only?
The main thing, I asked my doctor this, and the main thing is just staying super hydrated. So drinking lots of water, that's the best thing for kidney health. And you can Google other things like certain foods that are good for you, like beans or nuts or whatever. But so I'm not going to it's not a huge adjustment, but I did invest in a giant water bottle. I already tried to be super hydrated in my life anyway, but I was like, nope, I'm going to get a gigantic water bottle and fill it to the top, and then just make it my goal every day. Drink the whole thing. And that way I don't have to think about how many glasses of water have I had today. I forget. Now I'm just carrying around this bulky water bottle with me, but now I know I'm just going to drink that every single day for my own mental peace of mind, knowing that that's the bare minimum of liquid I should have in my body throughout the day. But yeah, that was just, my dad threw his hands in the air and was just incredulous that the doctor would say that, because he had no, I guess in 1987, they didn't scan babies for that, or they didn't scan at my hospital, because the running joke in my family now is, maybe, does my brother have two kidneys? Maybe he has 0 kidneys. I don't know. Parents didn't check that, apparently. So through this whole process, though, this is, it's been a journey. After I got out of the hospital, I felt worlds better. I knew that, I felt worlds better after 8 hours of getting the transfusion and getting antibiotics, and just being able to sleep again, because again, I was so sleep deprived and anemic, lethargic from head to toe. And my soul was weary too, because this had been nearly 2 months of just what is going on with me? And surely it's not serious. And of course, if I could do it all over again and start from the beginning it literally started with a runny nose, and that's how GPA often is triggered in people. You just start getting a runny nose, or maybe the occasional bloody nose, or maybe a headache here and there, but it starts off slow, and then it just all of a sudden rams into you. And, if I could do it all over again and see help sooner, I would. But I'm glad. It seems like from what I can tell, it seems like I caught it sooner than later. Certainly before it got to my kidney, my one singular kidney, which is a huge blessing. And that's something I'm grateful for talking about gratitude today. But yeah, it's going to be a journey. It's for the first time in my life, I'm seeing doctors on the reg. I would go 3 to 5 years in between doctor visits, because I didn't I felt fine. Why would I go? Why would I go to a doctor? And now I'm seeing a doctor. It feels like every week now, seeing some specialists and figuring out a treatment plan. And nothing's been set in stone yet as of this recording. But I'm hopeful that in the weeks to come, that I'll start on a remission treatment. Because just to let everybody know, I still have the disease. I'm out of the hospital. I'm taking some medication to kind of keep me stable and moving. My joints feel fine, but I still have this cavity in my lung that needs to be taken care of. And I still have, the disease doing what it would do if I didn't have temporary medication, just kind of holding it back. So in the weeks to come, I hope to begin remission treatment. And that could be a months-long process, 3 to 6 months, maybe longer, maybe shorter. I don't know. Depends on how my body responds. But then once, hopefully, that's the hope, is that this autoimmune disease goes into remission, then it's even beyond that. It's a years-long process of keeping it there, or squashing it, as my rheumatologist eloquently put it. So the goal for the next 2, 3, 5 years then is to continue to take medication that squashes the disease, and hopefully, for the most part, like all the stories I've read and what doctors have told me, like I can still live a fairly normal life. It's just something that's always going to be in the back of my mind. Like, okay, relapse is always possible. There's no cure for this disease, so it could always come back someday. And but if I'm meeting with doctors regularly and just kind of watching my diet, my body a little more closely, then hopefully there's nothing to like be significantly worried about. But yeah, it's been a whirlwind, and that's why Yob kind of went dark for a while, not like haunting dark, but just like what are those things that blow across Wild West scenes? What are those things called?
Tumbleweeds.
Tumbleweeds. Yeah, there were lots of tumbleweeds and cobwebs on the Yob website these last few weeks as of this recording. Which at the beginning I felt I felt bad. I'll just be honest, because I take my role as the site editor and the podcast host seriously. We have people supporting us on Patreon, and like I felt like I was letting people down, that we weren't like creating content anymore, basically, for I don't know, like at least a solid month at a time and beyond that too. On Patreon, we have all these Skype nights and Zoom rooms and Facebook Lives, all these digital community events, and all of those were just put on hold because literally my life's motto for like 3 weeks was just stay alive. Like literally just keep my legs elevated and drink lots of water and pray that today's the day that something gets better. And then ultimately it wouldn't, until I actually went to the hospital. But yeah, I felt bad, but then I also, you have to learn to show yourself grace too. Like literally, I'm not going to come on the podcast from the hospital bed. That could have been a fun episode though. But yeah, no, I had lots of good support within our community to just like take care of myself. And then, and yeah, like I said, I'm not 100% better by any means, but I see the road, I see the light to recovery. And I'm eager. I've been so eager the last few weeks to get this podcast back and to get to talk to you guys again, and to just engage with our audience and just get back into a regular flow, because this is one of the favorite things that I do with Yob is doing this podcast, and I've missed it greatly. And so that's kind of I probably talked longer than I wanted to, but that is the snapshot of my life. I know some people knew parts of that. Some people didn't know any of that. And so that is essentially where I'm at currently. Ryan and Jacob, do you have any just like questions, as if you had never heard that story before, or any encouragement for me? Which I will also gladly take.
Sure. I think the first thought that came to mind is that while no one wants to be diagnosed with anything, I would have to imagine that it did feel kind of good when you were actually able to identify what this thing is. Because I know for a long time, you had no idea like what was happening. And so I would think that there would have to be some kind of positive-ish feeling to actually like have someone say to you, a doctor say to you, hey, like this is exactly what it is. It has a name, and like this is what we're gonna do about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is absolutely when I tabulate my list of things I'm grateful for over the last couple of months, and even specifically with my GPA diagnosis, it's that I was able to get a diagnosis fairly quickly, because there are people with crazier complications, and sometimes they're older, so they've got a lot more going on physically, where they have a lot of things interfering. And so for me, it was really clear cut what I was dealing with, and my blood results were super clear, and I had no past history of smoking or drinking or heavy drinking, or like something that would throw off the results or put it into question. Like it was confirmed, like it was very clear with the hospital doctors, and then also with my specialists. They were like, yep, that's totally what it is. And I didn't have to get a biopsy, which a lot of people do, to kind of confirm that. And so I'm really grateful for the quick diagnosis, just to have that sense of direction. Like, okay, I know what it is now. And obviously none of this is ideal. None of this would have been a story that I would have written out for myself. But for what it is, I'm so grateful to have, just to have the quick diagnosis, to have a clear path, direction for treatment. We'll see obviously how that goes as I embark down that road. But from what I can tell, it looks like there's just a lot of promise. There's a lot of good. I live in a small town, but it's also a very, like, one of the big industries here is the hospital system. And so there's just like all kinds of doctors, and I don't have to travel like 3 hours away to get to these appointments or anything. Like, it's right in my backyard. And so there's a lot to be grateful for, definitely.
So Tom, what is the online GPA community like?
The online GPA community. So here's the thing, you guys. This crazy disease with a crazy name, granulomatosis with polyangiitis, it used to be called Wegener's, because that's the guy who discovered it. But here's the thing about Mr. Wegener. He had Nazi associations. And so the medical community eventually decided, we don't want that. We don't want to call this that. So now they call it GPA, which is, again, hilarious, darkly humorous, because those were three of my favorite letters in high school and college. And now they are like the worst three letters in the world. I hate them.
Nerd.
So yeah, the GPA community, there is a surprisingly, I was like looking on Facebook, because I just was like, I need resources. I just need to find people. I haven't connected with anyone personally yet, because it seems like an odd bunch from what I can tell. A lot of like a lot of Facebook moms. That's the vibe I'm getting put out there. But there are a surprising number of GPA Facebook groups and some forums on the internet. And so I've just been like, honestly, again, reading their stories and their perspectives, again, I'm just so grateful, because there are people who have like their noses have collapsed because it like went after their sinuses. So they would need like nose surgery, and obviously the kidney thing, like people on dialysis, and just, there's all kinds of horror stories out there for this disease, for those that are further along, either in age or maybe their medical histories prior to this weren't so good, or compared to mine anyway. So there's a lot of drastic stories out there. When I look at mine, I'm like that's not to sugarcoat my story, because I felt like death I wasn't on death's doorstep, but I would say I was on death's like winding stone garden path or something. I don't know. Like I was starting to lose physical energy and mental capacity. So it could always be worse, right? That's the theme of the times that we're in. But yeah, it's an eclectic bunch. They call themselves, some people call them wedgies, and I'm not.
Ooh,
I don't
no.
like it. I refuse
sorry.
to be
Nope.
a wedgie.
Nope. Also, while I would never want to make light of this disease, I will say, though, just as a word of warning to everyone, 100% of the people that I know that have GPA also do CrossFit. So I'm just gonna, I'm not saying that means anything,
Yeah,
but I
well,
just want to put that out there for our listeners.
The sad tragedy of it all, Jacob, is that I no longer do CrossFit. And actually, the CrossFit gym that I was affiliated with dropped their CrossFit affiliation because apparently Mr. CrossFit said some dicey things about race and people. So that was already a thing, that even before I got sick, that I wasn't a CrossFit member anymore. I was just a part of a gym now. But obviously through this process, I've ceased my membership, and I'm still trying to figure out what a solid fitness plan works out. I started doing push-ups the other day, you guys, and about nearly, I say died, but I can't say that now. I can't say about nearly died. No. I about collapsed on the ground because my lungs, they didn't feel like they were going to explode, but I definitely was like, oh man, this is like a new sensation, going up and down and pushing and breathing. And so we're gonna ease back into some sort of physical regimen. But But hey, I was at least able to do 20 push-ups. That's something.
Nice.
Yeah. So to tie a bow on this fun story, we're really uplifted. I'm so glad I can uplift everyone with my medical ailments of the last couple months. But I just want to say thank you to everybody, because I've heard from so many people through this process, a lot of our listeners, a lot of our yobbers and supporters that have just been so loving and so caring to reach out to me and support me. And I just appreciate, again, all the patience as I am such a creature of habit, and I am committed to this responsibility of editing, being the editor of this community, the host of this podcast, and putting out regular content, and just like constantly reminding people that they're not alone, and that this is a place to struggle safely and to tell real stories. And so I've hated being out of commission for the last month or so, and yeah, I guess in the back of my mind, I had a super dramatic paranoid fear that like 2 weeks without content would go by, and all of a sudden our Patreon would collapse. People would be like, "Oh, out of here! What's going on? He's not doing his job." But I appreciate all the grace and all the love for me during this time, and I just want to put it out there, because I know, knowing our community so well, and they've already done this several times already, but people are asking me, what can I do? What can I do to help? Do you need anything? How can I assist you right now? And so I'm just going to mention it one time and one time only. But Ryan, you actually, along with Marshall, one of our other authors, and he comes on the podcast every once in a while, y'all set up a GoFundMe for me when I was in the hospital, and the response has just blown me away. I'm just super grateful for people who, I know this is a financially tumultuous time for so many people right now with this virus and layoffs and furloughs and unemployment, crazy numbers here in America anyway, probably around the world too. But yeah, if you're able to give, I appreciate it. It's definitely needed. And that's one tangible way. But honestly, beyond that, a way that you can support is just pray for me, pray for my health, pray for remission. That's hopefully going to be the theme of the rest of my 2020 is remission, because it would be awesome if I could kick off 2021 with this disease not necessarily no longer plaguing me, like I explained earlier, but for the most significant hurdle of this process to be eclipsed by January would be awesome. So, and I'll be, updating as the podcast goes and as my writings, and if you follow me on social media, like I am trying to keep everybody updated as much as possible as I learn things, and because I know people care and want to know. So yeah, just pray for me. I appreciate it. Thank you for listening to this show and just supporting Yob. It's been a really humbling process just to hear from so many and to feel the love literally around the world. It's not an exaggeration. I've heard from people all over the world, and I'm so touched, and I'm just excited to get back to work. I've been so restless. I've been so bored, you guys. I've been losing my mind, and so I'm glad to get this thing back on the road again. So like I said, this is the Technically Untechnical season 3 premiere, and moving forward, just as we were doing before the break, the YOBcast is back twice a month, roughly every other Friday. I say roughly because every once in a while there's pesky months that have 5 Fridays, and it really just throws off everything. So there might be 2 weeks in between episodes instead of 1, or 3 instead of 2, I would say. But that's the plan moving forward, is to get back into this bi-monthly rhythm. And I'm excited to, hopefully Jacob and Ryan are excited too. And some of our other guys who have appeared on the show, they'll be making the rounds as well as we continue on with this wonderful year that is 2020. Something I'm putting out there, I mentioned the Patreon. Our Patreon, again, is such a faithful community, 185 strong at this point, 185 guys and gals for that matter, all over the world, supporting Your Other Brothers on a monthly basis. And I got such a great response from doing the YOBcast, which was our short form one-on-one podcast, a little experiment, a little break in the action, just to kind of switch things up, to tinker with a shorter bite-sized episodes. If you just wanted to take a walk around the neighborhood and listen to an episode, you could do it. Or if you wanted to drive to the grocery store and back and listen to an episode, you could do it. So it was a little adventure that I went on. We did about 20 or so, 22 episodes of the YOBcast. And Jacob and Ryan, you came on a couple times, and we got to meet some of our other authors for the first time. So it was really fun, this new experiment to talk to some of the guys, new and old, in our community. And I thought it'd be fun moving forward, because people have been wondering and asking, is the YOBcast staying around? Is it just done? Was it a one-time thing? And I would like to see it happen. And I think a fun way to make it happen is to set a goal on Patreon. We used to do these goals on Patreon where if we hit a certain number, if we hit a benchmark, that that we would do something new, add something new to our community and the content that we create. And so moving forward at this point, if you go to patreon.com/yourotherbros, you'll see that our next goal is hitting 200 patrons. We're roughly 15 away from that mark. And so when we get 15 more patrons, you guys, we will do regular convo casts. And I haven't decided what that's going to look like, whether it'll be at least once a month, but I think it's probably doable to do twice a month because they're really easy to produce, fun conversations. And I like the idea of like basically every Friday, a new episode. So either the long form podcast, which is what you're listening to now, or the short form, 20, 30 minutes of a one-on-one conversation with me and someone in our community. So that's the goal. If you've not joined Patreon, if you're looking for an excuse or a reason to do so, you could be one of the 15 people that puts us over the top into a brand new era of the podcast and the stories that we share. So if you're interested in learning more, go to patreon.com/yourotherbros. All the information's there. And hopefully sooner than later, we'll kick off a new season of the ConvoCast. It was called the Corona ConvoCast during the coronavirus stretch that we are not in anymore, right? You guys, we figured that out. We did everything we were supposed to do.
Talk about a brand that didn't stick, man.
So for all I know, we'll come back in the fall with the Corona ConvoCast part 2. But no, hopefully we'll drop the Corona and it'll just be the Yob ConvoCast, which is just one-on-one conversations. So that's the big announcement. And obviously, when you sign up on Patreon for $5 a month, we do all the stuff that doesn't make it on the episode, all the silliness, and sometimes a lot of good content too. Goes on to our Yobalog show, which is roughly our monthly episode where we just have a lot of awesome bonus content, stuff that didn't make it into the episode for one reason or another. And you can check out the Patreon tiers. As I mentioned earlier in the show, we have a really great time with our Zoom rooms, which are community group calls that we do twice a month. And we were doing those weekly during the coronavirus because everything's shutting down and community options were limited. And so we were having some really awesome conversations, 14, 15, 16 guys sometimes showing up to these Zoom rooms. So it's a really awesome opportunity for some digital community. I know there's a lot of people starving for that in general, if not right now, when churches are still not meeting and things are still up in the air as far as what does community look like right now? What do gatherings look like? So if you're curious about checking that out, that's an option out there if you're interested at all. And then one last announcement before we get to our Apple Podcast review. We've had this phone number for a while now, this Yob number, which some people use. It occasionally gets used. Some people call the number, but I think up until now it hasn't necessarily been super clear what it's for. And moving forward, because it's a brand new season and because it's a brand new era of the show, this is something that I would really love to capitalize on and see people get excited about. Y'all can't see, but I'm like smiling right now. I'm excited about this segment. If you call our Yob number, I would love to hear your voice on the show. Basically, you can respond to anything that you heard on the last episode, answer some of our questions, or share a story something that we said reminded you of. And then on the subsequent episode, I would love to play back just like a snippet of your story. And if you don't mind putting your voice out there, you can introduce yourself with your first name. You don't have to. You can just like be totally anonymous. But I think it'd be awesome because we get so many listens from all over the world. It'd be awesome to hear from people, like physically, tangibly hear from people on those episodes. So if you're interested, I'll share more at the end of this episode, but our Yob number is 706-389-8009. I guess the country code is what, 1? Is it just always 1 for America? Okay.
We are number 1.
So for our Croatian listeners, because I know we have them in Croatia, it's 1. Put that in front. Just call a number. You have a couple minutes max to leave us a message, and it'd be awesome to just like throw in some voices, some listener voices in these episodes, because it'd be cool to engage with our community more. We already get lots of emails on the reg, and if you want to reach out privately, that's always fine too. podcast@yourotherbrothers.com. But if you don't mind putting your voice out there physically, publicly, I think it'd be awesome to hear from more people. So we'll explain a little bit more about that at the end of this episode. But man, have you all missed hearing Apple Podcast reviews?
Every day.
Yes, I have. Do we have any?
We do. We actually picked up one Apple Podcast review during our hiatus. So I was expecting 0, truthfully. So when I checked the other day and saw that someone else had added their words and their rating to the mix, a 5-star rating, might I add, I was very, very pleased. So big shout out to Jenkin J. Jenkin J left us this review. He titles it Hope in the Darkness. And he said, these episodes are about real men seeking Jesus. Yes, there's fun along the way. Yes, there are deep matters of the heart. There are victories and setbacks, as well as Queer Eye and CrossFit. But as they share their lives here on this podcast, there is evidence of real hope. There is hope to finish strong in our journey of life, and these men point to Jesus as that hope. Fun to listen and great to be reminded of. Hope for the journey. So that made me smile.
Wow.
Queer Eye and
Thank you,
CrossFit, they're
Janky
really,
J.
that's like 80% of our content, I feel.
Mm,
Actually,
at least.
we haven't talked about Queer Eye in a while, but we might need to talk about that in our next episode for those that partake. I might need to bring on some of my other brothers.
I feel like that was such a well-rounded review, like well-crafted. Like it could be on the back of the book. That is our podcast.
Ooh, y'all, when are we going to write a podcast book?
Never.
I wish I knew a writer.
If only someone could like edit it and compile it and put it
Yeah.
together.
Which one of us has actually published a book?
I've published too, so I don't know who you're talking about. But
That's right.
anyway, thank you, Jenkins J. If you want to leave us an Apple Podcast review, we would really appreciate it. We're well over 100 now. It's like super awesome to keep hearing from people who get something from our show. That just makes my day. So if you feel so inclined,
Amen.
give us 5 stars. Talk about Queer Eye and CrossFit or whatever else we talk about. And yeah, it helps the show grow even more. And before we get to gratitude, of course, we need to be grateful for our sponsor of this episode. Thank you to Cursive Printed Wall Art. You are so encouraging, homie. You say the words like blessed and home sweet home, and you live and you laugh and you love with us. So we are so grateful. You just totally have transformed this era of fear and insecurity and stress and what is going on in the world, and you just put us at ease. So thank you. Thank you, Cursive Wall Art.
How else would I know that 2 spoiled rotten dogs live here?
Right.
Or that you do love cooking with wine and sometimes you put it in the food. How else would I know?
or how else would we know what we do in this house? In this house, we what do we do? We cry and we laugh and we I don't know. Live and love. Yeah,
And
exactly.
how else would I know what the fruits of the spirit are if it wasn't plastered
that's a
on
big
most
one.
people's homes?
It's a big one.
I have often wished that I would see it like Hobby Lobby, some wall art written in the most beautiful cursive, but have it say anger, envy, pride, wrath, lust, in like there's just like super elegant.
Mm-hmm.
So that when you first see it, you don't actually see it, but then you do. That would be great.
Back in the day, you guys, we used to have listeners who would hear us joke about stuff like that. And then a week later, I would check our P.O. box, and there in the mail would be a big cursive lust. So I'm just putting it out there into the universe. If you want to send me a big cursive lust, it has to exist. That thing has to exist out there.
But it can't just be lust. It has to be all of
set.
the.
You want the 7 deadly sins.
The 7 deadly sins.
Okay.
Also,
I'll take a giant cursive lust. Send it my way.
Or that.
Yeah.
Well, my sister does do some really beautiful hand lettering work, so I could ask her. I don't think she would, but I can always ask and see.
What an interesting request that would be. Yeah. So that's our sponsor. Thank you guys for sponsoring our show. I don't know why I called them you guys or who I'm talking to, but anyway, here we are talking about gratitude. Y'all, I've done a lot of talking, and I'll certainly chime in with my thoughts, but I want to hear Jacob and Ryan share as well. When you guys look at the last few months as we talk about gratitude, obviously there's so much that's been hard and been difficult and crazy and unforeseen, but I'm choosing to believe there have been some highlights in your last couple of months, that there have been some silver linings, and I want to hear them, and I'm sure our listeners want to hear them as well. So as this coronavirus has, it hit us out of nowhere, none of us had ever experienced anything like this, and this was all new and foreign, and we were told to wait a couple weeks, and then maybe a couple weeks would be a month or two, and now it's been like 4 months, and we, here in America, cases are exploding again, and so it's just like, where is the end? Is there an end in sight? We don't know. We don't know what the road looks like, but in the midst of this just like crazy, tumultuous, weird, bizarre season, what are some things that you're grateful for, and what are some highlights of this time? I'm curious.
Yeah, so I would say the biggest thing that I'm thankful for, which might seem simple, but it actually isn't, is just the fact that I have continued to have a job and to have an income. Working in the computer software world typically means that like working from home isn't a big issue, and just like the ability to continue to work on projects and have that be relatively unaffected by all of this, like that's huge, because like I know for my brother, who's an artist and who does a lot of big uh chalk pieces that are intended for like large audiences and large gatherings, those simply can't, like, couldn't happen, and even now can't happen in a lot of ways. So like he was um out of work basically for a while, and that's just like that's something that I haven't had to really think about, of like what it would mean if I didn't, if 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 I lost my job. And so that is that's huge, and I think that's been one of the biggest reasons of how like I've been relatively untouched by this pandemic in a personal way. Like there have um for sure been things that have been more like inconveniences, but I think being able to continue working and have an income has been huge. I would say then the other thing that's actually has been made possible because of COVID that I've been thankful for is that Taylor, who we got a chance to interview on this podcast last summer, because of all of his classes for school were moved online. He was able to come live with me for about 3 months, and so if it wasn't for this uh, pandemic, that wouldn't have happened. And so that was a really cool opportunity to get to just become better friends and to have a roommate once again for a bit.
Did you have like a hand washing basin at the entry, so like, and a hazmat suit chamber before you came in and
Yes,
out?
I
Because that's a
I
big
rigged up
adjustment.
some I rigged up a sprinkler so that as soon as you enter the home you were instantly covered in Purell from head to toe, and so
Yes,
it just worked out
got
nicely.
it. Can't be too safe.
Nope.
Yeah,
Not at all.
that's awesome. That's awesome that you got to have that little season with a roommate, and then to have your job. And man, there have been some heartbreaking stories of people losing work and just record unemployment claims here in our country. It's been a wild season.
I am also thankful for the blessing of a job where I can easily work from home, and they're keeping me on board. And so I'm incredibly blessed for that. Also thankful for my house, just a nice place to exist during this time. You know, staying at home is a lot easier when you like your home. So I'm really thankful for that. I've been working on this like kind of hobby programming project on the side, and so that's been really fulfilling, and I've enjoyed that a lot more than I kind of expected when I started. Um, I haven't seen myself as a huge like hobby programmer person. Like programming is something that I do for work, and then I leave at work, and then I go home and I just have better things to do. And
Preach.
yeah, and and certainly that's not a bad way to be. It's totally fine. I think in my field there's this sort of stigma on just letting your work be work. Like everyone wants to hire the employee who is just so passionate about programming that they do it like on the weekends and at night and in the morning. Um and yeah, no, that's not, you don't have to be that way to be good at a programming job. But I will say that having that to work on has been really satisfying, and feeling like I'm kind of like building something cool and neat that I like, and I'm learning new things, has been a great way to kind of fill the extra time that I've discovered in my schedule. Speaking of that, the other thing I'm really thankful for is just the emptier schedule. I think before COVID, I felt very, I just felt spread so thin. Like I just felt pulled in so many different directions by all these different like social commitments and volunteer commitments and um, events I wanted to go to and participate in and things I wanted to do. Um, and I just felt very trapped in that. Like a lot of things that wasn't I was very weary of, but wasn't quite willing to say no to. And so I think uh, coronavirus came in and in some ways rescued me from that situation that I had gotten myself into.
Yay,
So,
coronavirus.
sorry everyone. I prayed that God would fix my schedule and I caused the pandemic. Sorry about that.
It was all
yeah.
you.
Makes sense.
No worries. No, I said yay coronavirus in our Facebook group the other day because someone said something to the effect of like, yeah, I eventually was like, I'd heard of Yob for a while and needed an excuse to join the community, and this coronavirus really kind of pushed me to do that. And so I sardonically said yay coronavirus, but granted, you can join Yob anytime if you want to join Yob, but that's awesome. Jacob, have you had any like new hobbies, speaking of hobbies and just extra time and more time spent at home? Anything that you've dabbled into?
Not
Other
really
than cooking,
anything.
just incredible
Yeah.
feasts. We talked
Sure,
about
sure,
that
sure.
on a
Thanks.
YOBcast, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that like there are for sure hobbies that have been sort of heightened, like cooking, that I've been able to do more. But when it comes to actually like beginning anything new, actually, here is a thing that is new, that is incredibly nerdy, and what a space to confess such a nerdy thing. So my brother and sister-in-law and Taylor, who I just mentioned, we started almost a month and a half ago doing a Dungeons and Dragons campaign in which I am DMing, which I never ever thought that I would
Incredible.
do, and here I am. And
DMing?
I really like it. I am what is called the Dungeon Master, Tom. If
Oh,
you
right.
please,
I grew up in a Christian
be
home.
better.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It's true. Yes. No. That is fair. This would
You've
as a
alienated
child,
3/4 of our audience, but continue.
Yeah. No. This game of magic and paganism would not have been allowed in our home, but now that we are adults, we were able to do all the things that we were never allowed to do. And so that has actually been a lot of fun. And we've been doing it via Zoom. And so, yeah, it's been
Zoom to
pretty
the
great.
rescue.
Exactly.
If there's one company out there that's grateful for coronavirus, truly, it's got to be Zoom. Zoom, I can't imagine what numbers they're pulling in right now.
How do they make money because of just people purchasing the accounts that like let you do longer time limits? Is that how?
Yeah, and then there's like
monies?
There's different plans, and so it depends on whatever your company or organization needs.
Yeah, they have a whole like conferencing product where you can put on like large scale conferences online, which I'm sure that's been doing well.
But we don't want to like promote Zoom too much because we have to respect our actual sponsor, Cursive Wall Art. So keep that up. No, so it's funny that you mentioned that because Dungeons and Dragons, hilarious. If you grew up in an uber Christian conservative household, you might have heard that it was the occult or satanic. I mean, that's what I heard. But my only real reference for it is like I've seen it. There was an episode Community did, which was really funny.
Yes.
There's really nothing satanic about it. It was just like this fantasy. It comes across as just really nerdy, and maybe I think it would be fun to try. But I don't know. I don't know if there's for me personally, I don't know if there's like a long life for that. But I think it would be. I'm all about life experience, so that could be a fun
a new Patreon
goal
goal
on sometime.
Exactly. What I have learned though, having done some like research into the D&D world in an attempt to become a better DM, like I've watched videos on YouTube, like I've like read things. That culture that like is a part of that world, I truly cannot stand. And so I feel a lot of tension of like, I'm enjoying this and I'm having fun, but I really don't want to be like a part of it, like for real. Like, oh,
You might need to cut
so
that cord
yeah,
at some point, but ride
we'll
it out
see.
for now. Yeah, ride it out for now.
now.
Be the best dungeon master you can be.
Sounds like the opposite of CrossFit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, going back to what you said, Ryan, a little while ago, just the concept of having a home, like that's something that I definitely wanted to close with as far as what we're talking about. When we look at the last couple of months and things that we're grateful for, like there's really nothing like having an awesome home, like having a place to come to that is restful, peaceful, comforting. You know, the concept of shelter. Like I've lived 20 different places over my lifetime in different apartments and living with my family and living with 7 guys at a time and 4 guys at a time and one side of the country, one side of the other. So I have all this diverse, different types of places that I've lived, including my own vehicle, living out of my car for a year at a time. And I think I mentioned on the show at least a few times that where I live currently is my favorite place I've ever lived. It's just, I enjoy coming home. It brings me delight. It brings me joy. And for me to be in this specific physical place during this specific time in our history right now, I'm just really glad, because if I was where I was a year ago, living in the middle of the boondocks with no Wi-Fi and just kind of in this little cramped studio apartment, like it would have been a whole nother story. And so I've just definitely been counting my blessings as far as my home life, where I live, the city I live, the church that I'm starting to plug into. A big shout out to my pastor, and just going through all these medical issues and having the support of a pastor and church that's praying for me. Like that's huge right now for sure. And just kind of, as I mentioned in my medical description, the fact that I was able to get a quick diagnosis and caught it as early as I did, and have a treatment plan kind of laid out a few weeks, a few months ahead of me, like to start to see myself connecting some dots and getting to a place of greater health. Like I'm grateful for so much. I'm grateful that for this episode, I'm standing up. I always love standing up on a podcast. If you'd have told me a month ago that I'd be standing up for a podcast, I would have fainted from the mere thought of it, like literally, because I was so lethargic and I couldn't stand up for more than a few seconds at a time. So yeah, it was crazy. Like taking a shower was, I would take a 2-minute shower and then I would need to lie down for like 30 minutes to recuperate because of all the movement that was required just by doing that. So there's a lot that I'm grateful for physically, and then just with all the hierarchies of needs, having shelter, having food, having a beautiful place to live, having great friends and family, just like list goes on. So it's hard stuff, but it's helpful. It's helpful to look at the things that we do have in our lives, despite the things that have either been taken away from us or significantly altered right now. Well, I wanted to zoom out a little bit on this topic of gratitude. Thanks, y'all, by the way, for sharing. Just for the last couple of months, like it's been a slower pace. It's kind of maddening, but I also have learned to appreciate more intentionality, more rest in my life as well. So I would add that to the list. But because we're a community, for those that may be listening for the first time, or if you're not, or if you forgot what we're all about, our tagline is we're navigating faith, homosexuality, and masculinity together. And so real quick, I just kind of wanted to roll through those little 3 topics. And so in the areas of masculinity, the areas of sexuality, and the areas of faith, when you look at the scope of your life, not just the last few months, but these 3-ish decades, what are you grateful for? When it comes to your journey with masculinity, let's start there. What are some things that you're grateful for that you've either learned or experienced firsthand?
You know, I was thinking about this, and I think the only thing that really comes to mind immediately is just that, like, I like being a man. Like, I'm thankful that I'm a man, and I think there's a way to say that comes off as, yeah, I'm very thankful to be making 30% more than a woman doing the equivalent job, and I'm thankful that I can walk around the city at night and not have to worry about different things. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is
100% of the presidents, and I mean, there's the list goes
right.
on.
Yeah. No, what I'm saying is that, like, the feeling I'm describing is sort of the opposite of gender dysphoria, just like gender contentment, I guess, that I'm I'm happy with uh with the way I am, I guess. And well, I shouldn't say that. I'm happy with I'm happy with the gender role that I found my way into, um and I'm happy to sort of figure out what it means to follow Jesus as a man, someone who identifies as a man and is pursuing kind of a righteous, holy masculinity.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd echo that. Just like the sense of gender contentment. I know there are plenty of people in our community who don't have that or really struggle with that. So we certainly
Mhm.
see you and hear you, but I feel the same. That like I year after year, like I just feel like I grow more and more content as a man, and I think I don't know. I don't want to keep bringing up CrossFit. I know Jacob laughs at it, or it's like it's to the point where he's like like literally annoyed by it. But something like CrossFit, working out in general, running. I've run a couple half marathons. Like when I'm building up my body and I look in the mirror, um, there's just like such a I've never had a greater sense of body image and self worth when it comes to just the external, purely external sense of masculinity. But even inwardly, like to be able to contrast what I saw as a man through middle school and high school, my vantage point were the football players, the baseball players, just absolutely horrible bullies everywhere I looked in a Christian school, no less. Just that was my sense of masculinity. It was like, oh, if you were strong, if you had muscles, and if you talked loudly and mean to other people, like that's how you got ahead, and that's what being a man was all about. And to contrast that with just like meeting um, over the years through this community and elsewhere through churches and other ministries and Christian jobs that I've been a part of, like just to be able to encounter really true men among men who are courageous and bold and honest and genuine and sincere and empathetic, like to be able to hopefully glean some of those traits from them and to build those myself, like that's been a huge part of my sense of masculinity that I'm grateful for. It's a more rounded picture. It's a more authentic picture, more than just like whatever you see as a stereotypical man, whether from your upbringing or from movies and pop culture, just to see vulnerability displayed and to hopefully display it myself. That's been a huge part of my masculinity journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this I would say was the hardest one for me to think of something, because the first thing that came to mind was that um, my identity as a man, or thinking and um, processing through masculinity, isn't really something that I've had to wrestle with. And I guess I felt bad in thinking that, because it kind of had this tone of like the Pharisee praying loudly, like, "Thank you, Lord, that I'm not like those weak men who wrestle with what it means to be a man," because it isn't what I mean at all. Because of course, um, there are plenty of people in this community and in this world, whether you experience same-sex attraction or not, who really, really struggle and really wrestle with this. And I see you, and I love you, and I'm in no way better than you, but I am thankful that like this has not been a big area of tension for me. And I think that I kind of came to the point where I thought, yeah, no, actually it's okay to be thankful that I don't struggle with that, with everything that exists. Like that can be something to be thankful for, and doesn't make me any better than anyone else. Because of course I got plenty other stuff. I could go on and on, but that just happens to be one that hasn't been a
Yeah, for sure.
huge issue for me.
Yeah, for some reason, when I was thinking about masculinity in particular, the two words that came to mind were sensitivity and adventure, because for me, I've always felt this tension between what a man should be and what a man is. And I recognize conceptually that like to be sensitive is not inherently effeminate, that there are masculine men that are sensitive and that are empathetic and that are good listeners, et cetera, et cetera. And over the years, like that's something that I used to be super insecure about based on the men in my life around me. But you know, over the years, that's kind of a growing badge of honor that I can be so sensitive. Um, but then on the other side, like there's this absolutely inherently masculine desire for adventure, and whether that's like hiking. Not to, again, this isn't to say that women can't hike or whatever, but I'm just saying I find that all these desires for adventure, like travel and hiking and national parks and all these like hobbies and interests and inclinations that I have that feel so rooted in my masculinity that spur that sense of masculinity and that gratitude when I partake in those activities. Like I am really grateful for that as well. So I've over the years, it's, you know, gradually been sinking those like seemingly distant things like this reckless adventure self, and then also this like more of a cautious or sensitive self as well. But they're both inherently masculine, and it's been fun to just like to process it through blogging, through podcasting, through videos, through content that I put out, and then also just in day-to-day conversations with friends and loved ones. What about sexuality, y'all? What you've experienced and what you've learned and processed and journeyed through this fun area of our lives, sexuality. What are you grateful for? We could talk about things that are hard, but we'll save that for another time. What are some things that you're grateful for when you look at your sexuality?
Yeah, I'm really thankful that because of this experience of being attracted to men, I've been I keep wanting to use the word forced, but I can't. I would love to, if you guys think of a different word that captures this better, please chime in. But it in a way it has forced me to think more critically about what is marriage, what is friendship, what does it mean, um, what does it mean um, to flourish as a single person. And I think that if it wasn't for this experience, I think I would kind of go along with the flow of what culture and even like Western Christian culture teaches about these things, that I think in many ways miss the mark of their original intentions. And I think that um, because of this experience that I find myself in, I've had to put in a lot of work to think really critically and to go really deep into topics and theologies that I might not otherwise feel so inclined to do. Because at the end of the day, we in our positions don't really have a choice. Like we kind of have to like dive deep if we have any if we have hope of living lives of meaning and purpose and flourishing. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, word.
Yeah, I agree. Like just based on my upbringing, like if I didn't have this kind of unusual experience to make me think more critically about a lot of the stuff that was presented to me as a younger person, like I wouldn't be thinking along the same lines as I am today, which is better. So yeah, I agree with that. I think for me, it took me a long time to actually be thankful for my sexual orientation, for my sexuality, because for so long I was just thinking of it as the thorn in the flesh, you know, that you wish God would take away, but He's not, and so you just kind of have to say, all right, well, you know, your strength is perfected in my weakness, whatever that means. And but I think that's all that is true. But you know, I realized that a lot of my sexual orientation has to do with perception of beauty in men. That there is beauty in men, that men are created by God and therefore they're beautiful. And the correct response to beauty in creation is wonder and delight. And so And so men provoke on this aesthetic level some wonder and delight in me. um and like that can lead to um something unhealthy, but it can lead to worship of the creator who created them. um and I think that's kind of like what it's meant to do. And so in a lot of ways I feel like, well, and I feel like this aesthetic experience, this wonder and delight, is something that um most men don't experience when they see other men. And I think it has a different quality to it than when straight women look at men or think of men. And so it does feel like this sort of like niche experience, like God has let me in on this cosmic secret of some beauty he's created that's not that he's set aside for only certain people to see and experience. um and so when I think about it that way, I feel thankful for it. That and I think I see this beauty because God created it, because he sees that beauty too. And so I'm thankful to sort of see the world in some way that God does, that not everyone gets to.
Man, so well said. That's beautiful. I mean, I obviously, I'm sure Jacob does too, resonates with a lot of that, of just like being able to put a vocabulary to it, of, because I'm sure guys who hang out with guys, straight guys with straight guys, like if they enjoy it, obviously there's some level of aesthetic pleasure, or like whatever you would, I don't know if the aesthetic is the right word, but obviously if they like hanging out, they like hanging out. But how much do they think about it? How much do they articulate it? How much do they process it? How much do they ask why do I like hanging out with other men? What's that about? And just to be able to have that vantage point of us, a lot of people in our community, not everyone, but a lot of people in our community with just like big hearts and a lot of time to think about these things. Like, it's awesome to be able to put words to it, and to just like that sense of a cosmic secret. I really like how you phrase that, of just being able to appreciate beauty in creation, whether it's with men, whether it's in nature, what have you. So that's a huge one. Yeah, for me, riding along with that is just like some of the most incredible friendships, relationships I would have never found otherwise. Like with the internet, with the ability to connect with super niche people, whether it's people who also experience same-sex attraction within the Christian faith, or like in my case, connecting with wedgies on a Facebook group with Facebook moms and hearing about their collapsed noses and kidney issues. But that's another story of community for another time. But just like the way the internet has paved the way to connect with people, and how something as super niche as this, a common sexuality, a common faith, like that has knit together so many people, not just within Yob, but I mean, this side B world is so massive, and it's a bizarre little world, but it's a fun one to be a part of too. Some really great people, and it's been a joy for me personally. I've done a lot of traveling and crisscrossed the country and the continent, and to be able to connect with so many people in their homes, in their cities, coffee shops, conferences, churches. Like there have been just so many amazing networking, friendship building, community opportunities that I would have never had decades ago. And so just to be alive in this time, and to have the access to community and people inside and outside of Yob has just been such a blessing, directly from my sexuality. And that's something that I can't ever deny, as hard as it is sometimes to fit into a world and into a culture that maybe isn't as inclined to guys in our situation. Like there have been so many blessings to go on top of that. And so like anything in life, you take the good and the bad and you put it all together. But I'm just grateful, leading into this this closing conversation about faith in our Jesus journey, is like, I'm grateful that sexuality is a big piece of why I follow Jesus, because it's this daily recognition. Like, I don't know, I won't speak for you guys. I can't wake up every day and just forget that, oh yeah, I have a male attraction in my life. I have other men that I'm attracted to currently, or just in general. That's not something I can just turn off or forget about. But right along with that, it's just kind of like this sweet sense that, okay, I'm not just on my own here. I'm relying on something greater than myself, a higher power, and I follow the God of the Bible, and I follow Jesus, and that's this like constant recognition that I live with in large part due to my sexuality. Not the only reason, certainly, but it's a big part of it. And so, so I'm grateful for that daily recognition, because I think, and I'm really sad for people who, you know, they're Christians and I believe they're genuine believers, but then how much are they sacrificing? How much do they know they're sacrificing? How much do they truly believe they need to give up to follow the God that they claim to follow? And just speaking for myself personally, I feel like I know exactly what I'm giving up and the cost that it is, and the way my life could go versus the way it is. And I'm just grateful to have that perspective as I continue into my 30s, as I live out my Jesus year.
Yeah, I would say I completely agree. And I think that being in this time and place and in this culture, which isn't, I mean, this isn't really unique to all of human history, but being in a time and in a place for sure where sex is held up incredibly high, and having your sexual partner or partners is carries a lot of weight, to make the choice in this time to pursue holiness because of Jesus brings him a tremendous amount of glory, and that's what our lives are meant to do. And so having the opportunity to display that in such a clear way is something to be thankful for, even though it isn't easy, and it comes with tons of hardships and tons of pain, but it is it's a very clear and beautiful picture of the enoughness and the satisfaction that comes from being united to Christ.
Yeah, I found in my faith journey that I'm really thankful for the Lord's Supper as a kind of as a sacrament or discipline, that it just provides me my mind and my heart and even my body with this reminder each week that that I'm being transformed, that I'm partaking of Christ's flesh and blood. And you know, the way our bodies work is that the things we eat become a part of us, and I'm slowly surely being transformed and made anew in the likeness of Christ, and that there's no power in the universe that can stop that process, that can undo the work that Jesus has started and that he's going to finish. That I'm on this trajectory and nothing can stop me from getting from the point A I've been at to the point B that he's made possible for me. Yeah, and so that reminder, that tangible reminder each week or each time I do it is it's just so important to me.
That's a good one. Honestly, growing up, communion, the Lord's Supper, the Eucharist, whatever flavor of whatever label you want to call it, it just felt so empty and ritualistic to me. Like I got it conceptually what we were doing, but it just was like my tradition that I grew up in. It was like one of those small little rectangles, plastic squares, and those little like 2 drops of what looks like Robitussin. Like it just was like, what is this? This isn't what Jesus started, was it? But over the years, I've just had such an appreciation for moments of communion in large gatherings, large church bodies, and also just like small groups and friendships. Like there's just been such a specialness of gathering around these tangible things that remind us and show us who Jesus is, why we're here, what we're doing, what we're here to do. It's just amazing to be reminded of that as often as possible. And I know I've heard from people in our community that that's been a hard part of when it comes to spirituality. Like that's become a hard part from the last few months of not partaking in the Eucharist with fellow believers, that's been a really isolating thing. both relationally with other people and relationally with the Lord as well. And so yeah, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that as well, and I'm grateful for Scripture and just being able to read about a man, this God man that I follow, to be able to see these stories. Like, I don't know, I have been a Christian basically my whole life, and so it sounds really like Christianese to say, to like, oh, I'm reading it with new eyes. People say that all the time. But truthfully, like, I don't know, I would say the last year or two of my life, being able to dive into the Gospels and read about Jesus. And I don't know if y'all have seen this show, The Chosen, that's online. That's been really popular. So good. I would highly recommend it, checking out The Chosen, because their personification of Jesus is incredible. I've never seen anything like it. And just to have this whole new appreciation and this whole new connection with this is the person, this is the human, and this is the God that I'm putting everything on. And it's just been it's been a beautiful thing to re-experience in recent months and years, reading about it and seeing it on a screen now.
Yeah, I know that, like, just you mentioning how this has been a very isolating time for a lot of people. I would say I have a much greater appreciation now, I think, for what it means to be seen by God, because of not being able to have the same kind of connections and community that I've had in the past, to where, like, being having my life and my joys and my pains and my tears and my laughing not to be witnessed by anyone or by many people. I do have a newfound thankfulness of what it means to be seen by God.
It is a strange thing to have gratitude for suffering. Counterintuitive, certainly. Nonsensical, even. And yet Scripture says to count it all joy when you fall into various trials, that the testing of our faith produces patience, and that if we just let patience have its perfect work in us, we might be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Looking back on my own life, I see the fruit from the suffering. I do. And not just once or twice, but again and again and again still. I look back and see a secret pornography addiction. I look back and I see crippling anxiety among other men. I look back and see the ache, time and again, of friends and loved ones leaving the sphere of my life, or the sphere of this earth entirely. And yet I also see the author at work, of teaching me to open up about my sin struggles with myself, with him, and with others, other men. Barriers have been broken, and I will never be the same thanks to this crash to the earth and the rising up once more. Of learning to hold relationships loosely, to truly treasure every vaporous moment given and shared, every moment remembered, every moment that mattered. And so it becomes more and more ingrained in me to look for the author's pen strokes whenever I encounter present suffering. The pages of this present suffering itself are never in themselves enjoyable, but there's a growing sense and even a confidence that with each turning of the page, even the hard ones, God will use this. God will bloom something as he grooms me. It's what he does. The following lyrics come from a song called Scars by I Am They. Waking up to a new sunrise, looking back from the other side, I can see now with open eyes, darkest water and deepest pain. I wouldn't trade it for anything, 'cause my brokenness brought me to you, and these wounds are a story you'll use. Now I'm sending in confidence with the strength of your faithfulness, and I'm not who I was before. No, I don't have to fear anymore. So I'm thankful for the scars, because without them, I wouldn't know your heart. And I know they'll always tell of who you are. So forever, I'm thankful for the scars. And so, my brothers, may you rest in relentless gratitude, not forgetting the wounds of your past, or even today's, but practicing a continual presence in the Lord's promise, counting each trial, each insufferable mile, and each jagged scar with joy. May you yield more and more to God's authorship of your story, even and especially when you don't feel like doing so. Let us relinquish our will and our way we think the story should go, trusting Him and His ways, far better than ours. And while we need not forget yesterday's pain, let us not wince too long for it, or worry at all for tomorrow. But let us be grateful for today. Today, a day of life, full of breathing and sunshine and food and fellowship near and far. For God is good, He is working, and He will continue this good work in you.
Well, guys, I just want to say that I am incredibly thankful for each of you, and for, if it wasn't for this sort of niche community and place that we find ourselves, I don't think I would know either one of you. So I am
I know
thankful.
you wouldn't know either one of us.
That's true. That's true. We wouldn't be friends in any other context than this.
In what world
That
am I
is for-
passing
That
through
is
Fort
for
Wayne?
sure.
But anyway, no, I agree. I'm grateful for the whimsical, weird, strange way that our paths have crossed digitally and then in real life, and then and this podcast. I'm grateful for this podcast, that we have this space, this outlet to hang out together and be silly and be ridiculous, but then also really dive deep and to have people who want to listen. Like, that still astounds me that there are actually people in the world who will download this episode and listen to the whole thing. And there will be plenty, to be fair, who also download it and then it just sits there for 4 months because they see that it's an hour 47 and they can't do that right now. So there are those people too. But we're grateful for all of our listeners near and far, who have stuck with our show all these years. And that's a great segue to say we're back, and we're excited to be back. We want to hear from you guys, though, because that's the fun of the show, is we get to have our talk, but we would love to hear what you guys thought of this episode. So if you have any thoughts, surely you must have them. You can go over to our website, yourotherbrothers.com/podcast, find the episode 61 post on this here episode called Gratitude, and share some of your story. For if you're commenting during the era of coronavirus, you can comment something from the last few months that you're grateful for, something that was a highlight or something that remains a highlight in your life because of this new era that's upon us. And then beyond that, in the areas of sexuality, masculinity, and faith, what are you grateful for? We would love to hear from you. And as mentioned earlier in the episode, if you want to lend your, I say tangible voice, but I don't know, that doesn't sound right. Audible voice? I guess it's just audible voice. If you want to lend your audible voice to the show, we would love to hear you, like literally hear you. You can call our YOB line, 706-389-8009. Leave us a couple minute message, or just like 20 seconds. It doesn't have to be that long. Like I said, you can either share your first name or not. You can tell us a little bit about yourself or not. And we would love to hear your thoughts. Same questions. What are some highlights from the last few months? And then what are you grateful for in those 3 areas that we focus on here in our community? You can call anytime, 24/7. So please do. And I think what I would like to do is to incentivize people. If there's whoever the first one is, and I can check the timestamps and see when people call. So if you're the first person and you don't mind receiving a giveaway, I have some ideas for giveaways. So maybe that can incentivize someone in Croatia or Italy or Kansas to keep the list of exotic places going. Yeah, maybe that'll incentivize you to give us a call. So call the YOB line.
Hope you'll enjoy this giant curse of lust.
It will not be a curse of lust, but I have lots of Yob products in the works, so we get you hooked up with something. Shoot us. I'll get in touch with our whoever winds up calling. I'll mention it in the next episode to get in touch. Or if you want to be proactive, if you think you're number one, you can go ahead and send me an email, and then we'll get that ball rolling. But I would love to hear from our listeners more. So thank you all for not only listening and supporting us on Patreon, but then, yeah, in light of all the recent events in my life, just to have this thriving community, it's just been such a blessing. So once again, huge thanks to all who are part of Yob in some way, shape, or form.
Yes. Amen and thank you.
Amen.
And once again, a huge shout out to our sponsor, because where would we be without cursive? People can't even read cursive anymore, you guys, but it's fine. We kind of all know when we see this string of lines going this way, this way, and this way, we know we're supposed to live, we know we're supposed to laugh, we know we're supposed to love. And so thank you for just, again, entering our homes and just bringing a sense of calm, a sense of a middle-aged white woman. We appreciate that feeling very much, don't we, you guys?
Yeah, a home is not a home until you put a cursive word home on your wall.
Mm-hmm. A home is not a home unless there is the written out prayer of bless this mess.
Yes.
Or else your mess is cursed, honestly.
Your mess is cursed if it is not. If it
You
is
do
not
not
blessed.
want a cursed mess. You definitely want a blessed mess for sure. So thank you, Curse of All Art, for sponsoring this episode and putting it out there. Yeah, if anyone's listening and you want to sponsor a future episode of the YOBcast, I am all ears. Please get in touch. And in the meantime, you guys, we'll be back soon for another episode of Your Other Brothers podcast. This was really fun. Get back into it. I'm excited for the new season ahead. And Ryan and Jacob, thanks for rejoining me here on Zoom. Not sponsor of the show.
Nope.
For all your other brothers, my name is Tom.
This is Ryan.
And this is Jacob.
Let's see if I remember this. Reminding you, all of you, that you are not alone. Even the sparrow finds a home. See you next time, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Your Other Brothers podcast. Our show is edited and produced by Thomas Mark Zuniga. Theme music is Fear Is Not My Lover by Nathan Rousseau. We'd love to hear your story. Comment on this or any of our episodes at yourotherbrothers.com/podcast. Or share a story to play back on our show by calling us at 706-389-8009. You can also email us at podcast@yourotherbrothers.com or write to us at Your Other Brothers, P.O. Box 843, Asheville, North Carolina 28802. If you enjoy our show, consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Your Other Bros. Finally, if you'd like to further support our storytelling, community building efforts, consider becoming a Yobber. Yobbers pledge monthly on Patreon and receive perks like bonus podcast content, access to a secret Facebook group, regular group calls with fellow patrons and authors, and more. Visit patreon.com/yourotherbros for more information. Until we journey next time, we're glad you're with us.